At the time, there was not yet the scientific approach, the scientific method had not yet been developed, and people tried to come to truths about the universe, about the meaning of the universe and life, through independent thinking rather than through experiment. The modern scientific era began around 500 years ago with, for example, Copernicus and Kepler and Galileo and Newton. And their theories have great relevance to our scientific conceptions of the universe. Before the beginning of the scientific conception, people did not have access to telescopes. They didn't make careful measurements. They didn't think of using equations, mathematical equations, to try to predict phenomena and thereby verify what their theories said. They basically built things on speculation. But they also had careful observation. For thousands of years, people looked at the night sky and saw all kinds of lights in the sky, what we know today to be planets and stars and galaxies and so on. And they realized that some of them are moving, some of them don't seem to be moving, some move very, very slowly over a period of years, some move every day, etc. They catalog these, and they try to come up with an explanation. What are these things? What are these lights? Where are they? Why are they there? Why do they move? What moves them? And basically the conception of Aristotle all the way up to Maimonides, and Maimonides ascribed to these as well, was that whatever was outside the earth, and I'm generalizing a little bit, was heavenly, spiritual bodies. And the planets that we know today to be just rocks, basically, were heavenly bodies moving around in circles around the earth. Now, everyone observes on earth, when you move something, it moves in a straight line. Things don't naturally just tend by themselves to move in circles around and around and around continuously unless someone is pushing it, or unless it's an intelligent being that decided to go around in a circle. Their conception was that a circle is a perfect geometrical figure, and therefore all these entities move in circles around the earth, and the reason that they're understanding enough of metaphysics to know that a circle is a perfect shape and desirous of moving in a circle is because they are spiritual entities and they are carrying out the will of the grounded being or the creator or whatever it may be. When Galileo turned his telescope on the planets and was able to observe that they are rocks, they are matter, no more or less spiritual than the planet Earth, this was a fundamental revolution in our understanding of what the universe was. When Copernicus showed how much simpler it is to understand the universe if one thinks of all the planets and the Earth rotating around the sun, rather than everything rotating around the Earth, this was also a fundamental revolution in people's conceptions. This philosophy maintained popularity and acceptance until about 500 years ago. At that time began the scientific conception of the universe. We've all heard of Copernicus and his astounding conclusion that rather than the Earth being the center of the universe and the sun and the stars rotating around it, it was just the opposite. The Earth and all the planets were rotating around the sun. Now, there were seemingly many theological implications of that. People said, well, that means that humans are not anymore the center of the universe. Earth is not the center of the universe. Therefore, humans are somehow irrelevant to the universe and there's no God. Now, that of course doesn't follow. The Church considered it to be a tremendous theological problem, although some scholars now say it was more a matter of politics, and they persecuted many of the people who came up with these theories. Looking at it, and many scientists at the time, Copernicus himself didn't see any kind of theological problem. He believed in God, he believed in creation. He didn't think that his theory in any way dethroned humanity, made them irrelevant. He didn't think that his theory proved that there was no God. Other people used his theory to try to put theological implications into it. And when it became clear that his theory made a lot of sense, then of course the religious side of things kind of lost a little bit of value, totally unnecessarily. This scientific progress continued with the work of Galileo and Kepler and Newton. And they realized that natural objects in the universe follow very, very simple natural laws. Just like we all know as we're sitting here, we feel a weight, we feel ourselves being pulled into the seat, and we call it the force of gravity. It's just a name. We can figure out an equation, a mathematical equation, which tells us how fast will something move if you let it drop. How much force will the Earth exert on us as we're sitting down or as we're standing? What will happen if we jump up? how quickly it will become down. And what Galileo and Newton did is they applied those equations not only to objects on the Earth, they made an astounding leap, and they said, you know what, let's apply the same equations to the motion of those heavenly orbs at least. And they discovered that, in fact, the motion of the moon and the motion of the Earth around the sun could all be explained precisely by the same simple equation that governs how things move on Earth and how they fall and how fast they fall. It's exactly the same phenomenon governed by exactly the same equation. And that's totally radical. It's chutzpah to think that you can explain the heavenly motions by a simple law. But immediately what happened is the conception of the universe changed. Instead of having these spiritual entities moving around in perfect circles at the behest of God, you had these planets made of material just like the Earth is made, moving around as a result of the laws of gravity, just like the laws of gravity operate on Earth. Now, the way that people looked at the universe has shifted. At one time, it was assumed that anything that doesn't exist on planet Earth is a celestial being, has some kind of spiritual nature, and maybe is intelligent in some sense. For example, the planets. The planets were observed to go around in circles, in orbits. Well, this was something that it took many centuries for people to understand that was the case. But in our experience, we don't see anything moving around in circles, right? Things maybe move in a straight line and then come to stop. What would cause something to move around in a circle over and over and over and over again in a beautiful pattern? So it was concluded that these entities are intelligent and they're following God's will, and they're moving in a circle because a circle is a perfect and beautiful shape. And only at the time of Galileo, when telescopes were trained on the moon and other celestial bodies, that people realized that these things are rocks, basically, or gaseous entities, and therefore no more or no less intelligent and self-willed than the planet Earth. If you want to say that they are, then you have to make the same argument about the planet Earth. So people shifted towards a different view of humanity, and humanity's maybe significance in the world, although really, philosophically, there's no connection, but psychologically, that's what happened. And people began to perceive some kind of a new schism between religion and science. For example, when Copernicus came up with a model that the Earth is not the center of the universe, but the planets go around the sun, then people felt that somehow human beings were less significant than they would otherwise consider to be, which of course is not the case because our significance was never based on whether or not things go around us or don't go around us. And in fact, there were many prominent Jewish scholars who, at the time, totally accepted Copernicus. Now, it is not true that there is any theological implication of necessity to any of these scientific theories. The fact that the Earth is not the center of the universe does not mean that there's no God or no creation or that humans are unimportant. However, because people erroneously attributed the theory that the Earth is the center of the universe and everything goes around it to religious sources, and it's not part of religion, because they attributed to that, when those theories were overturned, people then said, well, religion has been disproven. Mankind is not important. Mankind is just some kind of accidental figure in the universe. And I think it's important, therefore, to be more minimalist, not to look at scripture, text, and to say, well, this is totally meant literally, and this is what it means, and to project your own understandings into what the text says, because you're probably misleading yourself and others. And there's also a danger in that, because you may be proven wrong, and then you have shaken someone else's faith in what is actually true, because you've given it a layer of untruth. And again, of course, what happened was that people said, wow, this universe is a mechanistic one. It's a naturalistic one. It's not spiritual entities moving in perfect circles because they are the perfect geometrical shape. But this beautiful geometrical shape comes out because of beautiful equations, which have these tremendously aesthetic results. But it's some kind of a natural law. One doesn't need necessarily to assume that there is something divine in here. Newton himself was a believer, and he firmly believed that God had created the universe, and God had designed the laws of nature, and he saw no negative religious implications of any of this. What happened, though, is that people began to think of the universe more as a machine than as some kind of spiritual entity. Clockwork mechanisms, laws, simple laws really regulating what happens.